Our guest on this episode of Three Food Memories has giving and hospitality in his blood. The eldest of three kids who grew up in southwest Sydney, he worked as a youth pastor before hitting the big time when he won MasterChef 2021, after leaving it to the last day to apply. A disciple of the power of food and how it brings us together, and together with his integrity, compassion, quiet humbleness, and his retro Hotmail address, why, my dear listeners, he's the perfect guest to welcome to Three Food Memories. Justin Narayan Buller.
I've looked forward to this intro. I've listened to a couple of episodes, and the puns and how you tie everything together, it's like become my favorite part of the podcast. So
What would you like to add anything?
No, I think you've nailed it. I feel like you've nothing.
Speaking of nailing it, your cookbook, Everything is India. I mean, that says everything about you. I think we should just stop the interview right here.
Yeah. It's a lot that's gone into it. So, yeah.
Describe your brand of Indian.
It would be, that's such a good question. It would be the culmination of Fiji Indian growing up in a global city like Australia. So it's a mishmash. It's permissible. It would be the type of Indian food that is permissible, open, progressive, but also very honouring of the past.
What's permissible about it?
Permissible in terms of, if you don't have an ingredient or you don't have the exact, type of spice, you can kind of compromise with those things and still create something that would be somewhat Indian. I think, my family history is Fijian Indian, so you kind of didn't have the luxuries of having all the regional spices and ingredients that you would get back in India. So I feel like in my DNA is that kind of permissible nature of just utilizing what's around us to create something that's Indian.
And how did your Indian heritage make its way to Australia? Can we trace that?
It's hard to trace because my grandfather was orphan, so his family lineage is kind of very difficult. But my grandma, Pati, I call her, her roots trace back, and both of them, just from their language and the way they look, you could trace back to South India. So when the Brits took over the world, shout out to the Brits, in I think it was 1879, I believe, during that period, or 1979. But they took a whole bunch of Indians all over the world. We went to India. My ancestors went to, from India, went to Fiji as indentured labor, what you call indentured labor. So they went there to work the sugarcane fields, and part of the deal was you would go back to Fiji, you could go back to India as soon as your contract had expired. The trap was they never got paid enough to save up enough money to go back to India. So they kind of chose to stay in Fiji, and they...
For better or for worse, do you think?
I think for better in terms of... I think the life there was, really... It was new. The land was incredible. The people, the food, the opportunity was there, but also for worse in terms of all your family, your friends, everything you kind of grew up around, you lost a connection to. So, yeah, it was. I couldn't imagine how they would have felt or what it would have been like, but I'm assuming it was a tough decision.
Can you recall some of those stories that you were told as a child?
Yeah, the stories are like, for me, I had a connection with my great grandfather and great grandmother. So I got to meet them when I was young, which was really cool.
So let's do a little bit of a timeline. How old were they and how old were you?
So I was about 8. They were about 85.
So great.
Great. And so 2 more greats back in India. Wow. So 5 generations now back, traced back to India. So my great grandparents had a connection to India. My great did not. My great had a connection to India.
I'm doing the greats.
Yeah, my great grandparents did not have a connection to India because they were born and raised solely in Fiji. So the way they thought about life and lived, it was kind of you know, they loved it. Like, I think Fijian culture and the environment and the land so different to the Western world. Like, you're kind of content with what you have. You know, you can, you know, you go out for the day, you catch a fish, you come home, feed your family. Like, that's life. You've made it. It's an incredible day. You know what I mean? There's no Joneses. There's no comparison. You know, the weather's incredible. There's produce around. Yeah, the scenery is stunning. The connection to nature and land is there. And so, yeah, it was a beautiful. I went back. I've gone back many times. I still have my grandma over there, my nani. She's still over there, and so I get to visit a whole heap. And yeah, I love it. Love going back. Used to hate it. Funnily enough, used to hate it as a kid because you'd grow up with all your luxuries and technology in Australia, and then you'd go back and you'd, you know, quote unquote, have to slum it with no air conditioning, and, you know, the TV was, you know, didn't have all the channels you liked, and so you know, the shower wasn't as nice. So I'd complain. I'd be like, I was so ungrateful, you know, and the food was, you know, just, you know, Indian food all the time. Like, nothing was cool about it. And then it wasn't like Fiji, I think we imagine, like an island. And no. When I went back, I stayed with my family, and it wasn't pretty. It wasn't nice. But I think I went back when I was 18, and I think I changed a lot in that time, and, you know, went back with my dad, and my whole family was there, and so we got to explore the island and hear incredible stories of where my parents grew up. And at that age, I was, you know, you're forming your identity as a young man growing up, and
you're forming your identity based on where you've come from.
Exactly, and who your parents are, the type of food they ate. And I was fortunate enough to have a really good relationship and have a good relationship and connection with my parents. So that became an important part for me. And so it was wild. Like, so I remember we went back for one trip, and we went to the house my mum was born in. But this is how it happened. It was literally around the corner for where she currently used to live. And then so my dad just drove to the house, stranger, knocked on the door, and the same family that had bought the land from my grandparents was still living there. And so the explanation was just like, hi, I'm, you know, Alec Narayan, blah, blah, blah. I've married, you know, Sunita. She lived here. And then they'd be like, oh, come in for a cup of tea. And then we're in the house all of a sudden. Strangers, like, you know what I mean? We're in the house all of a sudden. They're like showing us around. They're like, and my dad's like, yeah, your mum would have been born in one of these rooms. I'm like, what the heck? This is crazy. You know what I mean? Like, it blew my mind. Because imagine like just going to the hospital room, like the very room I was born in. That would be a cool thing to take my kids to. But we don't have that connection. But there was such a sense of place. There. Yeah.
It's every day, isn't it?
It was incredible. Yeah, and the same tractor that my grandpa used to have was still there. Like in the and it was just broken down, and like it, you know, weeds had grown around. It looks so cool. Like it's like such an aesthetic for me, like such a vibe photo. I'm like, this is amazing. There's like hills in the background. I loved it. I was like, really fell in love with it.
The land that time forgot.
Yeah, exactly. It's just this time capsule of like.
Do you find answers to questions that you didn't know you had?
I think, 100% you do. Yeah, that's you feel like you gain a sense of importance about small things that I think I didn't necessarily grow up with here in Australia. Like, you know, like the moment where my mum was born, the moment where something happened, the moment you meet someone, they just have all these stories and connections, and you know, the door is always open for strangers, and it's just a wild experience. And something I think I've actually inherited, and our family has actually inherited.
An open door policy.
Yeah, 100%, and taken to Australia. And again, as a kid growing up, hated it. Hated the open door policy. I wanted like my privacy. I wanted my room.
But let's talk about that, because you probably didn't know who you were at that point. Were you Australian? Were you Fijian? Were you Indian? Hang on, give me a second, folks.
Exactly.
Let me sort this out.
Yeah.
And then when you sorted it out, it kind of was...
Yeah, well, I've come to resolve that I'm Australian. Like, I'm like Australian.
Oh, so that's right. So that was one of my questions. Is
Yeah.
What are you?
I would describe myself as Australian.
Right.
And like but I'm also Fijian Indian.
Indian before Fijian?
Well, now I would say we're Fijian, but Indian. Obviously, I don't look Fijian, like the island, like the native Fijian. So I just place Indian in front of it so people have a sense of the history. So I would say Fijian Indian, just to give people that idea, that most people wouldn't know that there's generations of Indians that have grown up in Fiji.
So did your family members marry within Indian communities?
Mostly, but I have family members that married Fijians. Yeah, so you have like Indians with like curly hair and everything like that, and they're stunning. So it's really cool.
So we've got a cross pollination of humanity. What about a cross between the two cuisines? Do we ever see what happens when Indian food crosses with Fijian food?
It's wildly delicious. It's like one of those things, like if you go to most islander, this is not a rip on islander cultures, but you go to most island countries, and it's not a competition, but Fiji as an island country has the best food easily.
How did I know you were going to say
because so this is the thing, not that they're lazy, but the food, if you grow up Samoa, like Fiji, New Zealand, like the food is so good. Like the produce is just, you don't have to do much to it. You know what I mean? Like there's a dish in most countries called lolo, or raw fish, or something like that, where it's just cooked fish or raw fish in coconut cream.
But would we see that would we eat that wherever we went?
Yeah, you would see that, a version of that on most island countries. And it's delicious. It's fresh coconut cream. Have you had like fresh coconut cream? It's so much better than the tin stuff. And then you have fish that was literally in the ocean hours ago and has texture and flavor that is so hard. Like it's just delicious, right? It's meaty, juicy. You chuck it in, pinch of salt. They just lime. That's it. That's raw fish. That's kokonda. That's whatever it is. Like in all of these things, or you would boil it, turn it on. You boil the fish, cook it, lolo. Like that's the dish. And it's delicious. You don't have to do much to it. But with Fiji, because of the influence of Indians there, you've got like a little bit of garlic, a little bit of chili coming into the mix. You've got a little bit of spice, a little bit of, something else getting added to it. So you get that delicious thing already.
When you talk about it, you're moving your hands up and down.
Yeah. I know. That's what you're doing. You're amping up the spice. And so, you put a little bit of chili into that mix, and it's like, ooh, the sensation, the deliciousness, the hot, cold creaminess of, spice, everything that's going on. And so you get this elevated of something that's already great, but you get this elevated version of it, and it's just delicious. And then you have Fijians that are cooking with, rotis and chapatis and curries with how they cook food, and it's so tasty.
You speak of a very large community of people, very tight. Are they as curious as you are?
I think so. I think so. There's a big openness in Fiji. Like I've been to India a couple of times, and still learning a lot about that country. Like a lot of my, I'm learning more about myself as I go there. But the communities there are quite tight knit. Like this is how we do something in this part of India. This is us. This is our curry. You put cream in a curry, you're from the northern part of India. If you're from the southern part of India, you're not putting dairy in, mainly because it's unaccessible. Like it's not as accessible, but you have the dish is attached to who you are in that sense of place. Whereas with Fiji, I guess we're quite young in like our development as Indians, but there's this openness to take on other cultures and other people's history and what they brought to the table. So you have, in a Fijian household or in Fijian, you have them cooking chop suey, like a Chinese dish that was introduced by the Chinese that were in Fiji. So you have that kind of coming into the mix. You have soy sauce being added to curries. You have, coconut cream getting added. You have cassava served with a chicken curry. You have taro and chips served with chutneys. And so it's just this, they're open, and for whatever culture or whatever someone brings to the table is kind of allowed at the table. It's not like, hey, we wouldn't eat those things together. Do you know what I mean? Whereas like in Australia and some parts of the world, it's like no rip on an Italian, but you know how they're like, oh, you never put cheese with, you never put parmesan with a seafood dish. Never. It's a no, Yeah. But we kind of like, there are those rules, but it's also like if someone did it, we'd be like, yeah, go for it. You know what I mean? Like, let's eat it. See if it's good. And if it's good, it stands the test of time. And if it doesn't, let's forget about it. Yeah.
Well, let's start with your first food memory, Fijian lovo.
Yes. Yeah. Lovo is, again, similar to a lot of island cultures. It's an underground oven. So you're cooking, it's usually huge amounts of food because you're creating this fire. You might as well not waste it. So it's massive amounts of food, usually around a celebration of some sort.
Give me an indication of kilos of protein.
Kilos?
Yeah.
I wouldn't know kilos, but we're going like half a whole lamb. So we would buy or a whole goat. We would get a whole goat and just wrap that thing up.
Which is your preference, goat or lamb?
Ooh. I think goat is it was just always just that little bit more flavorful and tasty. But lamb would be the common one I've grown up with, just because it's more accessible here in Australia. So got a soft spot for both, but there's something just a little bit more homely and authentic about a goat curry or dish. And so, yeah, so we would do things like that. So, yeah, I wouldn't have an indication of kilos. It's more like, all right, how many people? Are we going half a lamb or a whole lamb? Like right. That would be the kind of conversations. And yeah.
So it's law as in LORE. This is half a lamb's going to do 20 people.
Yeah. There's exactly.
So it's cooked. A lovo is cooked underground.
Correct.
With hot stones.
Yeah. So usually you have like in Fiji you have like organic like volcanic stones or river stones that you would use here. So they kind of retain the heat. So basically you just create a fire, heat all the stones up, and then you dig a hole. Place some stones at the bottom of the hole, put some banana leaves there. Cover it with dirt, banana leaves, more dirt, some banana leaves, and then put all your food in. Then banana leaves. Then rocks, banana leaves. I'm getting all the orders wrong, but it's like lasagna, right? And so you just top.
The Italians won't like.
So basically, it's like there's hot stones on the bottom, hot stones on the top. And then you got dirt and banana leaves kind of covering the whole thing, and it just cooks for hours. You do it at the start of the day. Yeah. So it's a whole day event. Oftentimes, the men are up early. The women the night before have kind of marinated all the meat. If they are doing that, we would marinate the meat. Not very common practice, but being the Indian part of us is like, let's ram some spice and flavor into it. And then, you'd kind of marinate that, get the fire going early in the morning, let it heat up, then give it a couple of hours, you're having tea, coffee, hanging out, and then you go get all the meat into the oven, top it all off, and then you kind of hang out, celebrate for the day. 5-6 hours later, you come back, there's the big reveal, it's this theatrical reveal.
So my dad did a version of a hungy once with a mate of his, and they got very drunk, and the food that came out of the ground tasted like steamed dirt. What did they do wrong, and how do you prevent it from tasting like that, literally steamed soil?
It's a part of the flavor.
Oh,
that earthiness. That it does have that like weird earthy dirt kind of taste to it. It's like so unique, you can't recreate it. But
So then, how do you offset that? Like, what are the condiments that you have with steamed dirt?
That sounds like a bad experience. Usually, like, I didn't love it. It does have that, like, if you're not into it, it's like a smoked.
No, this was dirt.
Okay, maybe there was you offset it. I don't know.
So explain the flavors. Explain the nuances that I'm missing out on.
It would be the closest thing I can explain it to in a Western context context is like Texas barbecue,
Right.
like wood smoked, brisket meat. There's an art form to it. Like if you go too hard with the smoke, you go too hard or too hot, you've got this acrid, bitter taste. So there's this balance to it. And so that would be the comparison. So it is something that is deeply savory, smoky, earthy, but you also have something that is you've got every ingredient kind of picks it up differently. So you got cassava, taro, a lot of like root vegetables in there. You've got goat and chicken as well, and the chicken's always slightly overcooked for, just because you never get the timing right. And so, but you've got the lamb and the goat that are just melting in the mouth. You've got palusami, which is like a dal or leaf dish that's slow cooked under there, and it just all takes on this deeply savory, earthy flavor. My mouth is like watering as
the way that you're describing it is now. I'm coming over. But so here's the thing: how do you have a lovo in a suburban Sydney backyard? Like, do you just dig up under the hills hoist and like drop in the beast?
That's exactly how it happens.
Wow.
Yeah. So you just dig it up. So we had like a dedicated area in our backyard growing up.
Yeah.
It was just the area, the lovo pit. Like that's where it would be all the time.
Yeah.
So it never recovered. It was always used. So yeah, you just go for it.
And does it get like a wood fire oven? Does it get better as that area get better the more you use it, the more you season it? Let's say.
Oh, yeah. Yes and no, really.
Right.
Like I think it is kind of what it is, but it does. The rocks are there. You can reuse it multiple times. It's kind of like that dedicated cooking zone for a lovo.
Now let's talk about your book.
Yes.
The book has a convivial quality that gives us a unique into your Indianaity through a Fijian, southwestern, suburban Sydney lens.
Yeah.
There's so many layers in what I just said, which really speaks about your book.
Yeah.
When you were writing this, who did you visualize your audience would be? Because I felt you wrote it for me.
That's amazing. That is basically what I wanted it to be. I would say I started writing the book before I started writing the book. It probably started in, I'd say 2013. So I loved cooking. I still do. I was saying it like I don't. It's at times now it's work, but I love cooking. And so every time I was hanging out with my mates or family, I'm the dude cooking. I'm like, hey, they're like, let's go out. I'm like, let's get some ingredients. Come over to my house. It's going to be a good time. I'll cook something. And what would happen after a lot of these dinners, friends would be like, hey, how did you make this? How did you make...
interrupt you there. That is a generational thing now. More and more people in your gen are staying home and cooking as opposed to going out to the pub and spending their money on alcoholic beverages. Yeah,
there you go. There's this full circle moment.
Yeah.
And I'm all for it. I think there's a certain sense of nostalgia our generation has towards those things, hopefully, and maybe we missed out on it for a period, and we were like, we want to bring this back and make it a part of our families, our kids, our friends. I think it's super important. So that was always a part of my life and my DNA, and so where the recipes kind of came into play, I basically, every time a friend would ask, I would be like, oh, this is how I made it. I didn't have a recipe. I'm just, you're a chef. Like, we're just cooking, right? You're never writing it down. So I would basically kind of make up, hey, this is what I did. I'd text them a recipe. And then sometimes I'd develop my cuisine and my dishes. So I'd have my go-to dishes. So people would be like, hey, how did you make your roast potatoes? I'm like, this is what I do. And then, I'd invite another group of friends, someone would ask. And I basically was like, I'm going to start a Google Doc instead of rewriting a text every time. And I'm just going to write these recipes in here. If someone asks, copy, paste, send, I'm done. And so that's where it started. I started a Google Doc. It was called Recipes for Rob because this guy called Rob Stanmore, shout out to Rob Stanmore, he'd ask me for recipes all the time. So I just started.
So he hasn't purchased the book.
He has. He has. He actually purchased like 5 copies of the book.
Got on your Rob Stanmore.
Yeah. So I remember like he was the first because he'd asked me multiple times. So I just said, hey dude, instead of texting you recipes, I'm just gonna like add all these recipes into this Google Doc for you and like use them whenever you want. So that's how it really starts. So I really started writing my recipes for friends and family that I wanted to share.
Because that's it. Every recipe has a dedication.
Yeah.
Or to an experience with a family member or a friend.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
You bring people in, don't you?
Yeah, and so that's what I wanted to feel like. There's a lot of like, I don't explain who anything is. Like the language in the book is very informal, very conversational. In fact, the way we wrote a lot of the book was actually in conversation. Like, so I would have a conversation with the person like Nicholas Jordan, who I co-wrote the book with. We would.
Are we doing shout outs?
We're doing shout outs. No, but we would sit down, we would talk, and basically we would get the story from there, and we'd transcribe it and write that in the book.
So effectively, you've immortalized every person along with every recipe. How does it feel to have created something that will live on potentially forever?
Yeah, it's a huge, at the start, you feel this huge weight of that. And then during the process, you start to get a sense of just real fun expectation and a sense of joy in this process and honor of what it is. And then when it's done, I am like hugely critical of it. It's like, this is the worst thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just to be honest, this is like, I would have changed this, I would have changed that. And then as soon as you step back and it sinks in for another moment, you're like, this is the hugest, wildest opportunity and honor that I've had. And to have some of the recipes written down there that I grew up with, and that or just humble recipes that my grandma taught me, I ate every day, to be there and for me to pass that on to my friends, family, strangers, people, is wild. It's vulnerable as well. Like a lot of the recipes and stories are pretty open, and I wasn't sure if I should share some of those things, but I'm like, you know what? People are going to be friends, so we'll go for it.
You're 31, relatively fresh out of the box.
Yeah.
What does forever look like for you?
Forever, I think it's what happens when I'm gone, like when we're old and grey, and how people, and then that moment comes to an end, and how people will kind of remember me and talk about me. I think that's forever, and as long as you're in the mind of people, you're alive still. It's kind of that's immortality to a sense. You know, I still talk about my grandparents, and still cook some of the dishes they taught me, still do some of the things they taught me, and I want to pass those things on to my kids and my family. And if I can do that, then there's a part of my grandparents that continue to live on. And I think that's what it looks like for me, to do something of greatness, of impact, of importance to people that continue to do it for others. And if I can do that, I think that's a forever type moment.
I think you've done it.
Yeah.
It's called everything.
Yeah. Thank you.
Let's move on to your second food memory and something else. Let's move on to your second food memory and something else philosophical. You said, I am curry. Shall we get the curry and
yes,
have last night's
fitting.
leftover?
Only fitting.
Can you pass it over, Jock?
Yeah.
So what?
We're at a pausing point. Just got somebody at the front there.
Cool.
What if I just run
Yeah, no, you're good.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so it's capturing us. Okay, so here we go. Your second food memory is as we eat it with our hands and bang the microphone with the aluminium tin. I'm so excited. I've never eaten.
I'll walk you through it.
Please do.
So there's a pickled chili. This is very nostalgic. So we had chili.
That's your camera.
Oh, we had chili. We had chili trees growing up, and abundance of them. So my grandma would pickle these just in vinegar, and we'd have them year round.
Did you pickle these?
Yeah. And I would have these as a kid. So I'd kind of like my grandpa loved it. So you take a bite of that, and then you go a bite of, a little chaser of some roti or rice and curry, There's a rosella leaf chutney in there, which is quite sour, that purple color.
Yum.
And there's 2 other types of pickles
Can't really
in
get it
there.
on my-
Yeah. And that's a mango
Oh,
chutney as
wow.
well, like a kulcha. Yeah.
Yum.
And
It's not really. It's Indian with a trip to the tropics.
yeah, I would say it's lighter, like
Yeah.
a more lighter Indian kind of meal. Like you don't feel heavy after this. You could eat a lot of it.
I'm going to
It's
get
bad.
my face in it. Hang on. This is really... I'm going to move the
I
microphone.
know, I haven't made it quite practical for this. I've
Oh,
got
none of
bones.
this podcast is practical.
Yeah, I've got bones and everything in there, but that's the go.
Oh, my God.
Mm.
So, sorry, talking with a mouthful of food.
What do you taste? Walk us through. What are your thoughts?
Turmeric.
Yeah.
That's what I get big,
Yeah.
but my body craves turmeric often.
Yeah.
Especially when I'm a bit run down, it says turmeric, and that's the first thing.
Mm.
Or when I'm needing a good cleanse. So the turmeric comes out first. Look, I taste onions because I taste
Yeah.
the protein in the chicken, which is beautifully cooked.
It's almost a little bit overcooked, if you notice, because you've got a whole chicken there.
Yeah, right.
So it breaks the rules of
I'm gonna-
culinary. So the dark meat is cooked perfect. The breast meat is almost overcooked, but what it does do, it gives you that extra chew, and it extracts that extra flavor and spice, and you get your mouth starts salivating a little bit more. It's almost like it's not quite a jerky, but you eat jerky
Yeah.
and you just it's so. What it does do is like extract more flavor from the dish. So it is, in a sense, it's kind of like how it's meant to be, but I guess breaks some modern Western culinary rules of.
So this is something that you would eat every week?
Yeah, growing up, this is something that I had pretty much every week. Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm talking with a mouthful. And did it make its way into the school lunch boxes? I've got a napkin there for you.
I know. I'm gonna stop. Funny story, right?
I'm always up for one.
It never did.
Oh, what? Because you'd finish it the night before.
No, because my mum would get this roti like we have here, right? Break up the chicken, roll it up like this, wrap it in paper towel and foil, and we'd take that to school. I was super embarrassed
What?
of this type of food. Obviously, there's a smell to it, so you open up your lunchbox. No one else has like a wafting.
But what about
Smell
the
coming.
Italians and their garlicky salami sandwiches and things like that?
Yeah, but it didn't. It was still a sandwich. It was still a common form factor. So this was like, I just always like never wanted to take it to school. I in fact remember a kid had a Devon tomato sauce and butter sandwich. Right, I'm like, Mum, let's go. I think I tell this story in the book. It's like, Mum, let's go get some Devon. Mum's like, who's Devon? And I'm like, I don't even know what it is. So we go to Coles or Woolies, and we're just asking around for Devon. And we, finally get to the deli and find out what it is. I guess it'd be bologna in another country. And I remember getting this sandwich. I did Devon for like a whole term just to be like one of the other kids. And I actually liked it, but let's be honest, this is
so
heaps
much
better. But my brother, on the other hand, who's 3 years younger than me, and like if you see him, he kind of loves his food, you'll know. He did. He took it to school all the time, and my sister did as well. So and then later on, it got to year 12, and I had mates over for a study group in year 12, and I was actually super embarrassed. Mum cooked food for us, which was like pasta, but then she had her friends coming over, so she was cooking curry for them in the house with my mates, and I was like, Mum, what the heck? And my mates are like, what is that smell? And I'm like, oh, my mum's cooking chicken curry, and and she's like, do you want to try some? And and I'm like, oh. So there's like 6 of my mates in the kitchen eating chicken curry, and they were like, this is so good.
Was that a turning point for you?
Yeah, they loved it. And the next time we did a study day, Mum cooked chicken curry, and I'm like, we'll do this next time. Mum cooked chicken curry. We had the pickled chilies. We had roti rice. They're all eating this, and they're all loving it. And I'm like, this is kind of cool. Like, I wish I did this earlier. And so, yeah, it was interesting kind of
Isn't it
turning
funny
point.
what we see that
Yeah.
we think is, but is not really?
Yeah. And I guess growing up, Again, I'm eating with a mouthful. You want to be accepted. You don't want to stand out too much, especially in high school. You kind of want to, unless you're doing something great or really cool, then you stand out. But other than that, you kind of don't want to be noticed. You know what I mean? I just want to survive, get through this. And so for me, you know, it was just trying to be have the norms. Yeah.
When you eat this dish, I mean, I'm going to tell you about me first, but when I eat this dish, I am at home. I am nurtured. I'm looked after. My belly's full.
Yeah.
My immune system is firing on all cylinders. I'm in a really good place. What does this mean for you?
This is home for me. Like I'm at my house growing up. Every memory of me growing up, I'm almost a child again as well. Kind of transports you to that time and place and age and memory you had, but also I kind of had this every day growing up, so it takes me to every single memory I had in my household. And so yeah, that's where I go with it.
The first page of your book, you transcribe a conversation between you and your mother. Just give me a little précis of that conversation.
I just took a full bite.
We can wait.
Yeah.
Would you like to read it from the book?
Yes.
Let's read it from the book. And I'll redo that introduction. I'm happy with oil on the
Perfect.
on the
Perfect.
book.
No worries.
The first page of your book, you transcribe a conversation between you and your mother. Can you read it for me?
I would love to. Here we go. So this is Justin's. We've called it Justin's mum, and it's me. So her name's Sunita. That's the mystery there. So this is Justin's mum. Every time you cook, Justin, I find this tiny bit of Indian in there. Justin, me. Wait, you think everything I cook is Indian? My mum, yes. Me, that's so funny because when you cook, even if you make pasta or lasagna, I always joke that it tastes like curry because of all the ginger and garlic. And now you think my cooking is like that. My mum, well, not all of it, but most of it. You either use Indian spice or something in there. I think that the way you can bring things together and create these amazing flavors, so a little piece of you comes along with whatever you make. I could eat your cooking every day. Me? Thanks, Mum. My mum, but I still like my chicken curry more.
Is your chicken curry better than hers?
Oh, look. I want to do a side-by-side comparison.
Well, she's a clever your mum because
Yeah.
she's celebrating you. She's also celebrating herself, and then she drops the kicker.
Yeah, I know.
Is that mum?
Yeah, 100%. I do love her. I think her curry is actually better, but yeah.
But that's how many more years of curry making does she have on you?
Yeah, a lot more.
And so that recipe has a patina, doesn't it?
Yes.
It has a growth. It's settled in.
100%. Yeah. It's even the pots and pans, little techniques of timings. It's just all these things just make a difference.
I want to talk about your time as a youth pastor. Mm-hmm. I mean, you just this little interaction that we've had. You possess all the qualities a pastor needs to game on. You've strong leadership skills. There's integrity, compassion, empathy. I would imagine a little bit of biblical knowledge, while also being so humble, a good communicator, and accountable. Why did you choose youth pastoring? Is pastoring a word? I think it is.
Yes, it is. That kind of came to the mix. See, I feel like I've been very fortunate in my life, and I have a sense that you've almost had a similar story to this, where you've felt like you've always done the same thing. Like, I always wanted to help and serve people. That was kind of like...
You are no happier unless you are giving of the excess that you have.
Yes, yeah. That's always what I wanted to do. So I grew up going to church, volunteering, and I always wanted to do that. And so I kind of stumbled into this career as a youth pastor. I actually was studying nursing before that.
Which makes total sense.
Well, it makes total sense in terms of the helping people. Doesn't make total sense in terms of physically. I can't look at blood. I know, like, as in I pass out. So if I look at a large amount of blood, I'm knocked out. And needles. I can't do needles, can't do blood.
So when did you?
So yeah. So when I told my parents I was doing nursing, they're like, "What the heck? Like, what do you?" And I was like, "Oh, I'll just get over this fear." You know what I mean? Like I'll get over. It turns out you don't get over it. Like, so yeah, there were a couple of times where during the nursing experience I had to take a break and drink some cold water, almost passed out. But look, I got through the degree. For people's safety, never worked a day as a nurse, but went into youth pastoring. And so, it was always geared towards helping people.
What did you uncover about yourself through this mission?
I think I discovered that I always needed to do something that had purpose. And basically, if there's something that doesn't have a purpose to it, I essentially don't do it. So, like, I think in some jobs, if any of my bosses are listening, whatever, like if there's like a task that I thought didn't connect to something bigger or go towards helping people, it just wasn't essential.
What's bigger? What's bigger?
It's helping people feel community, feel loved, feel connection, and help them discover their identity and their purpose. And so if it didn't lead to that in a way, it kind of wasn't important to me. So I always felt like my job was to do that. And I guess throughout my life, the medium of that has changed many times, but the purpose has not. And for me, I believe food is a huge connector of that. Like, I guess you replace, and what I believe Jesus actually did growing up, like what Jesus actually did in the Bible was he would connect with people through food and through meals. It wasn't through like rules and do this and that. These are the rules. If you don't act like that, you won't make it. He kind of like...
Well, he simplified it too, didn't he?
Yeah. He just had love God, love people, love your neighbor. And those are the principles and values that I really aligned with the way he lived. And that's kind of like what I think food does. It has this incredible power to bring people together. Like we might not agree on much, but like you take two enemies and put them in a room, put something delicious in front of them, and I guarantee you, like, it's going to be hard for them to smile or smirk and really have an ounce of enjoyment there. It will happen, because it has this ability to draw people together, and I guess this is where it's led me now.
Not that I was very close to Jesus. I didn't know him that well, but
Yeah.
Jesus had missions accomplished and missions impossible.
Yeah.
Did you find that with youth pastoring?
It was definitely that. There's definitely those moments in that. But you're always just motivated by a higher purpose, calling, in terms of just helping people find purpose and identity.
And what in particular about youth?
Yeah.
Why did you want to help this particular part of the population?
Yeah, I think youth, it's such a pivotal, youth, that youth age group, and I would describe that anything up until 25 is like 13 to 25. It's such like a pivotal part of your development as a young person in the world. And I think it's becoming harder and harder to live life in that age group. You're forced to grow up quicker. You're exposed to heaps more than you should be exposed to at that age. And so I think I always felt drawn to it. And it also felt like there was this you had the most potential in that period, and if you could instill purpose, identity, calling, you could do something great. Hey, you're loved, you're incredible, and help speak positivity and life into that age group, then you can build on that foundation and go on to do something great.
That's all the stuff that you were given growing up.
Yeah, I had that through great parents, good environment, school. Like there's like 100 different factors where I was very lucky in my life, and some people don't have that. And so for me to be able to create a platform or a place like a youth group or something for people to be able to do that, I thought was really, really important in my life. And yeah, that was always the driving factor there, and hope helped a lot of people along the way. And yeah.
I grew up having KFC. It was my family's guilty pleasure meal when mum and dad didn't want to cook. It's something that you said and something that I could say.
Yes, yeah.
Your third food memory are birthday celebrations at restaurants as a kid.
Yes.
Let's talk about these. Before we do, we're going to have our next food memory, and we're going to eat it out of a box.
Perfect. We got one each.
We got one each because not that we're promoting this company. So tell us about your third memory.
Third memory is the restaurants we would go to growing up. So there was distinct restaurants for distinct birthdays. So our celebrations for birthdays growing up would really be like whoever's birthday it is, they got to pick the restaurant everyone would go to and celebrate. So for kids, Pizza Hut. Specifically, the all-you-can-eat Pizza Hut. There's still one in Minto, southwest Sydney.
Wow.
It's incredible. And then grandparents loved Chinese restaurants, so we went to Chan's Chinese. And then mum loved Chili's, which isn't around in Australia. Mum should have more birthdays. And then dad was Lone Star, loved steak. Like his thing was steak, mashed potato, mushroom sauce, and hot English mustard.
They're specific restaurants, aren't they? Like
yeah.
fun, takeaway, fast foodie business.
Yeah,
I mean, they're all fast food.
100%, yeah. And there was obviously Sizzler. Can't go past Sizzler. I've actually got the Sizzler cheese toast recipe
saw that
in my
the book.
Yeah. It's just linked to that memory, nostalgia.
Now, you refer to these restaurants as working class restaurants.
Yeah.
Why do you call them working class restaurants?
I think they were it's not McDonald's. It's like just a step above McDonald's in terms of experience, what you get, the quality of the cuisine. You know, it's a little bit nicer, but it's also not a fine dining, have to use a fork and knife style restaurant. You can stroll in wearing jeans, a t-shirt after school, whatever works. So, but yeah, we didn't have much growing. Like we went through different seasons growing up. We had a lot at some point. We didn't have as much money at some point, but these restaurants were always accessible to us. And
as a Fijian Indian living in Australia, did you notice class structure? I think we should eat a piece.
Yeah,
because
I think we should. Actually, as a Fijian Indian growing up in Australia, coming from Fiji to
I'm
here.
I'm thinking about your curry that we've left over
I know,
there.
I know. There's more.
I know. Let's a bit, and then we go.
We can go multiple. We could put some curry on the pizza, and then
Oh,
there you
wow.
go. That's kind of the vibe of the book, really.
Well, this is the vibe of the book. Tasty, but did you notice?
Well, how do you just podcast and eat, by the way?
I just wanted everything
love
about you was food, and I never eat, but I just felt compelled
So
to
tempting.
eat with
I
you.
know. It just feels like we're hanging
Hanging out.
I love the vibe, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, growing up in Fiji, right, there was one McDonald's in town in Nandi growing up. So fast food was a luxury. So I think that's why when we moved here, these types of restaurants like Pizza Hut, they would have it maybe once a year.
Right.
You would usually have a celebration at home. So for us, it was such a luxury to go out and have Pizza Hut or Sizzler. It was like the pinnacle. You know what I mean? It's like dining at Aria or Key. Like after you've grown up.
It's interesting
Fiji.
though. You say that it's that fine dining style Aria or Key, but your family's food literacy goes beyond processed Western food, so that they would see this as luxury.
Yeah.
Is astounding.
It's very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think they still had the influence of Hollywood and movie stars and Western. Like you saw white people and rich people kind of eat this kind of food.
Is it aspirational?
It is.
Again,
it is.
white.
Yeah.
Let's go back to this white and this class structure.
Yeah,
Is it?
I think it was. I think it is that kind of, this is what they eat in America. Like we can
The land
have
of
it here. The land of
what was free.
Yeah, exactly. Let's not get. That's another podcast.
Some other podcast.
But yeah, I think there was a bit of that.
Did you notice or prejudice?
No, like at the time growing up, no, I didn't. I think I was quite fortunate in terms of where I grew up. Like Southwest Sydney is very diverse, as opposed to like if I was on the northern beaches or something like that, just naturally with the. So you didn't notice it as much. My dad, when he first came to Australia, did have, he worked in sales, and some people refused to talk to him or refused to shake his hand because of the color of his skin. And
Did you ever see that?
I never saw it. The experience I got of Australia was it was quite open, quite diverse. Like I went to school with a lot of Filipinos, a lot of Asians, Indians, Egyptians. So it was really white Australians as well. So that little pocket of the world was like real beautiful. I think Southwest Sydney was quite affordable as well. So kind of if you migrated here, you went there. It wasn't as established.
So everyone was on the same socioeconomic
Yeah, there was a bit of that.
spot, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think as I grew up, like I think people, Australia became more open to other cuisines. And so it like food was almost like the Trojan horse that, broke down all the barriers between different cultures and all the divides and all the class. You would see people from every culture and every class, like eat a certain type of food or eat Indian food. And I think I was fortunate to grow up in the time I grew up in Australia. I think it helped with my development a lot as a cook, as a chef, as a person. So I feel very lucky for that.
Are your family eating in restaurants like this today?
Yeah.
Still?
Yeah, for sure.
So this is kind of a tradition.
Yeah, it is. It's a bit of a tradition, nostalgia. Hopefully a little bit less.
What
They have to be healthy now. They're getting.
What did they make of your MasterChef win? I just have to have another piece of pizza. I don't know. No, I don't.
It's just sitting.
It's
you have
warm
to,
on my lap. I'm waiting to kind of Netflix it out.
I feel like there's
I wanna
so
go back to
much
the
going.
curry.
We're at a buffet of.
Yep, we are in our own sizzlers.
Yeah. It was quite interesting. My mum, if you spoke to my mum, she always had this sense that I would have done well at the show. My
Is
dad,
that mum being a mum, or is that mum being your value?
No. I think that's mum being mum. Mum, that was kind of like how I got into cooking. Was my parents were like, my dad was probably a little bit more critical, but mum was always like, "This is amazing," and I know full well it was crap. You know what I mean? Like maybe she just loved having a day off on the tools and someone else cooking, but she was always super encouraging, and so I always felt like. I was encouraged to cook and do this and express myself through food. And so when MasterChef happened, I think they just felt like it was a natural progression, and they were super encouraging about it.
So, of the prize money that you won on MasterChef, you said there's heaps more where it came from. Just be generous, keep helping people, and things will work out. What did you do with the prize money, Justin?
Look. Without going into too many details, no, I always have the belief that I never want like money to control me. I always wanted to be a generous person, whether I had a lot or had little. That's what I saw.
Cut to the chase. You gave it away.
No, I didn't give it. I didn't. No, but I saw my parents do that growing up. Whether they had a lot of money or little money, they were always generous with it. So I won't go into the details, but I was able to give money to a few people that I wanted to give money to. I also saved a bit, invested it, did some smart things with it. So
you were charitable with it.
Yeah, you could say that to a degree, but I feel like I was very blessed. So yeah,
there was enough to go around.
Yeah, exactly.
There was enough in the pantry.
Yeah, there's plenty more where it comes from, right? Yeah. I'm still young.
So describe the feeling of charity when preparing food.
Yeah.
What does it give you when you're sharing food?
Oh, it's always about what does it give me? There's a part of it that is slightly selfish, to be honest. You know what I mean? Like you do love.
But what is selfish about it? Just watching somebody rejoice in what you've done?
Yeah, there's a bit of that. You know what I mean? Like it's like when you
performative.
Yeah, there's a bit of that. So you got to check yourself there. I think that's always like a good thing. But it's always so lucky to be able to provide something to someone that's like nourishing to their soul, something that brings comfort, something that brings joy, hopefully. So I always feel super lucky to be able to do that, like to evoke a memory or create a memory for someone through food. I feel like we're tying this in really, but yeah, it always feels.
I did say you were the perfect guest. For
yeah,
this
it always feels really
series.
feels really fortunate to be able to do that.
You're used to cooking for many. What's it like cooking for one?
I think cooking for one is still cooking for. There's always abundance. There's always like, all right, you're planning for a little bit extra for lunch or dinner or something. Like last night, I cooked dinner for me and my wife, and I cooked lunch for you. So there's always like, you're always thinking about where can this go? Where's the next meal or something like that.
Does your wife cook?
She does. She despite what she would say, she is a good cook, and so she can cook. Yeah.
So is there cooking and cleaning separated duties?
There's no real roles
Like
or
Fijian
responsibility.
cookery?
No, nothing like that. Like I would do. She does help heaps in the kitchen, and I think she'd give herself the cleaning, organizing, sous chef role. So we naturally just slide into those, but when she's doing a lot of the cooking, I'll be doing the cleaning. She actually made jerky for the first time. I've always wanted to do it, and I was away for the weekend, and she took my thing and did jerky, and it was so good. I was like, what the heck? This is amazing. So
Is she Fijian too?
no, she's half Filipino, half Australian. So completely different, and a completely different upbringing in terms of her dad was the main cook. So her dad was a chef. Her mum, sorry mum, can't cook at all. Hopeless. It's horrible. Sorry. But she was Filipino, and so
Mum is Filipino.
Mum's Filipino.
And Dad's white Aussie.
White Aussie. So but the Filipino side, because mum didn't cook much, she doesn't have all these incredible recipes. So we would go out to Filipino restaurants to have good Filipino food, and she would love it. Like she would be like, so every time she's over here, I make an effort to go to some Filipino restaurants. And in that kind of phase, I discovered pork sisig, which I always thought adobo, which she actually makes adobo. It's sometimes good, sometimes, you never know. But pork sisig became my favorite kind of Filipino dish. And I kind of taught her how to make it. So it's funny. I've actually, which I randomly enough, there's that recipe in the book.
Of course it's in the book.
Yeah, I know. A lot of the recipes I think we're talking about is kind of in there. So yeah.
Let's move on to your social cause, and you've chosen World Vision's 40-Hour Famine.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
I was first introduced to it in high school. High school kind of did that talk, and it was where you basically don't, you kind of fast something for 40 hours, 40 days. Is that
40 hours.
40 hours,
Imagine
40
fast.
hours, 40 days. Yeah, 40 hours.
Zero by
40 hours. It's called 40 hour fast. So we would, you'd pick something and fast it for 40 hours. Yeah, that's how I was introduced to it. And I thought it was always just a really cool concept and really good practice to keep in mind. So you gain a cool practice by doing it, which extremely helps the person doing it. But you also get to raise money for an incredible cause that helps feed people. And yeah.
The 40-Hour Famine is now celebrating its 50th year.
Which is crazy.
I remember I did it I was 10 and I did it in its 10th year.
Wow.
But we didn't do the full because we were too little.
Yes,
we didn't do the full 40 hours. I think we did it intermittently. Where does the money from this particular initiative go to?
Every year they kind of support, I think this year, was it Haiti? The one, I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I think it was Haiti.
So every year they kind of focus on a specific area. This year the focus is on Haiti. So all the money raised in this year's one will go towards that.
Now, this is your opportunity to ask me a question.
Okay.
What would you like to ask?
There's so much to ask.
We've got minutes.
Okay, I'm going to go. What piece of advice would you give to, this is a very selfish question, someone in my position, or what's something that you wish someone told you when you were my age? I'm not trying to create an age gap, but I feel like there's a bit more wisdom on this end of the...
There is a little bit more wisdom, and I will tell you, I'm very fortunate in this. I think we're heading into our 8th season of 3 Food Memories. I've just been so blessed to have interviewed octogenarians, people in their 80s. And what I learned from them is that their minds are on fire. It's their bodies fail them. So what I've taken on, and I struggle with every now and again, is just live it, just do it. Because one day the body's going to let you down and the brain's going to be on fire. So isn't it great to experience life when both faculties are on track and just keep going? And never, ever, I was having a conversation with my kids last night about something. I was asking them to fix a behavioural issue. And they were like, I don't have faith in myself, Papa. And I said to them, without faith, without hope, you have nothing, even in the darkest moments. So that's the advice I would give you. That's someone awesome. In your position, whatever that blessed position may be. Now, just to wrap this conversation up, when we spoke in preparation for today, I asked you, do you feel like you've been here before? I may have caught you off guard. Perhaps I should have asked you, do you carry the baton forward of all the learnings and lessons of your people who made their way from India through to Fiji and here to Australia?
Yes. Yeah. I feel a sense of definitely a responsibility to do that. Because if I don't, it gets lost, and I feel like every person kind of has their nuance and their take on that, and so I do feel a big sense of responsibility for that.
Thank you, Justin Narayan Veneka, for being part of 3 Food Memories with me. Bulla.
Thank you so much. That was awesome.
That's it for this episode of 3 Food Memories.